Spock waited out the storm. These energy creatures saved them. It's revealed that they were the colonists that turned into energy, which is very cute. Like they're Sillians, of course. They're Sillians. Of course, they can do that. Proto Q Sillians. Yeah. So that begs the question: like, why didn't they then stop the storm from happening? Storm's over. Maybe they couldn't. Maybe it was too big for them. I mean, ion storm passing the planet constantly. Ion storms. Yeah, that never quite made sense in the original Star Trek, nor does it quite make sense in Next Generation. How would they have... You would think that something that strong that could float over a planet like clouds, like actual clouds in an atmosphere, even though they wouldn't look like from the planet. Yeah. And the really obvious floaty beings, I think, because they read Sillian books. What's funny is I was not in Canada in the writer's room when they thought of this at all. It's just they thought of something very similar to that. And I don't mind because it's funny. The chimeric antibodies. Yes. Yeah, they referenced the character. Oh, yeah. So, years ago in 2015 when they were going to do that Star Trek story, and that Mike Gamelt guy was all in the news and everything, because I've wrote a fan script, It was just a script, and it was very lengthy and had a lot of actor names mentioned. Of course, he didn't have any actors in it. They thought he did, but he didn't, and they thought he pitched for Star Trek, and he didn't. But anyway, it's kind of like that. It's like, oh, he did that. Some of his stuff from that famous script, as well as bled into Lower Decks and this and other stuff as well. So some of his stuff is in there too. The goofy, angsty sort of atmosphere of the Augment Lady and the other Augment Lady that was really obvious. So Una Riley, number one, is a Sillian. She is from the Sillian planet. And they established that the Sillians in this version are called Illyrians, and they're Augment people. In the Starship Locations series, though, they're technically, which is really silly, they're technically descended from, or actually are, a bunch of kids from Pine Hill, from a school for kids with learning disabilities, where they all played Star Trek, and for some reason the classic Trek crew visited the school, and then for some reason the Next Gen crew visited the school at the same time, so they were confused. 78 years apart, they both went to this planet, Sillian Earth, and Q thought that was great. He thought, I'm going to humiliate Picard. I'm going to annoy him because he doesn't like children. I'm going to go to this school and give those kids the power that I gave to Riker in that one episode of Next Generation. I'm going to make them Qs. So he goes down to the planet, he makes them, and of course this would utterly annoy Picard. But the kids are thinking of classic Star Trek too. So they're like, oh, I want classic Star Trek to be in the same place with Next Generation. So they just wish it and it happens. Whoosh, there they are, the Enterprise flying overhead and over the desks of the school, the kids out in the play area and whatever, and they beam us up and we go visit Star Trek. Yeah. It was rewritten as Starship Locations. Yeah, so... But yeah, that's basically our fanfic idea that eventually evolved into several other stories and ideas and things, and eventually is now bled into the lexicon of all of the internets and everything, and half the time they don't know where they got it. There's an episode of a lost episode of Next Generation called the Iliop Adventure, where the Enterprise fights an army of Teddy Ruxpin type characters and a leader that's a Teddy Ruxpin. There's that bear people, that is right out of the first Silly Trek adventure. The only way they would have known is if it got leaked out by the Sillians from Silly Saga in the 80s. Into the earlier stages of the internet, so it goes way back to the early 1980s, the late 1980s, but the early internet. They're just coming into it, and they're all like, oh, that's totally where that comes from. The Iliop Adventure was recreated as a fan anime adventure a couple of years ago by Silly Kelly. He decided to go, I'm going to do that. I'm gonna go to Iliop planet and say it's the convention hall, or rather, I'm gonna go to the convention hall and say it's the Iliop planet. So he did. We got to see what that would be like. Except in that case, the Teddy Ruxpin literally was a Teddy Ruxpin, and yeah, in that case, it wasn't evil. It wasn't trying to kill them. You might think, oh, Five Nights at Freddy's. Oh, no, we weren't thinking of that actually. We were thinking of Chuck E. Cheese, which Five Nights at Freddy's is borrowing from Pizza Time at Chuck E. Cheese. Yeah. That's where they're getting that from. Five Nights at Freddy's is the current version of what that was before. It was animatronics that go awry and kill. Also Disney characters. And you figure people thought of that. So here we have. We don't have any killer teddy bears, but I just thought I would. Maybe next week. Maybe they'll counter it. If they do the Iliop adventure next, that would be great. But but they probably won't. Yeah, they might do a Five Nights at Freddy's. Who knows? They might do that. Yeah. But it'll be compared to Five Nights at Freddy's. It won't be compared to mine. They'll probably do it this season. So yeah, it was basically a spoof of the Wrath of Khan, but with a Teddy Ruxpin as Khan. That was the joke. He's an augmented, therefore a Sillian, therefore roundabout. Una is a Sillian. And of course, the next generation version is that there are other versions of it, and slightly revised the next generation version, because Will Wheaton's character Wesley Crusher is my age and I'm his age, and he's never been to conventions, but what there's a premise that Picard wanted to understand Wesley better, so he allowed the Sillians to return on the holodeck and whatever. Some of them got out because they have Q powers, and yeah, they were trying to take over as well. So some of that doesn't make any sense, but it is funny that the angst of some of these characters, they're Sillians, so sure, it's a little friendlier Sillians than they. So anyway, I didn't talk much about the episode. Rambled on about Sillians, but I kept mentioning them, so I thought I would give it a little backstory about the Sillians, so you would know, okay, that's what he's talking about. Some kind of fan film that he did years ago, or story, or something. That's what it is. This is a fan story. Yeah, and it's out there on Amazon. It has Starship Locations, so you can go and look it up and read it. Yeah, so then you'll know. They'll say, oh, so yeah, okay, they were, because you figure that would be kind of scary and kind of awesome at the same time. Was that silly episode where Q offered Riker Q powers? If you offered it to teenagers, they would be tenfold nuts about it. You know, it would be a really, and then what happens when they grow up and they form planets out in the Federation and stuff. That covers that too. For 30 some years, 35 years. But yeah, so some of that Sillian stuff is in the lexicon of Star Trek, and we were some of the people that thought of it decades ago, still around. So if they want to hire us on the next season of Picard or something, okay, we'll do it. If they want to, help them with that finale, but we got some things wrong. But yeah. Anyway, so yeah. No, indirectly. There were other people that, we weren't in the writer's room. Don't blame us for that. Yeah.